Hi, everybody. So, it is almost September. Kids are going back to school. And I am here today with my fall Thematic TBR preview. So, basically, what I like to do for my TBRs is split my reading up into different themes. So, throughout this year, I have been reading books with disabled protagonists, romance comedies for Valentine's Day, books by Black authors for Black History Month, etc. So for the fall, my thematic TBRs are wrapping up my TBR as books seen on TV. This has been a thematic TBR that I have been doing since February, where I have been reviewing books that have been seen in the following TV shows: Friends, Gilmore Girls, and Joey. I am wrapping up this TBR by reviewing The Picture of Dorian Gray. Kathleen and I have been listening to this audiobook since February 22nd, and we have had to take breaks in our listening schedule because our schedules have been busy with other things throughout the spring and summer, and we finally resumed listening to the audiobook last week. We are 50% done, and I can fully say that this has not been one of my favorite books. The main character, we don't know, I can't remember his name is Basil, and he is a painter who is painting a portrait of Dorian Gray. And he is madly in love with Dorian. And honestly, I don't like any of these characters. I think it's kind of humorous how obsessed Basil is with Dorian when Dorian doesn't even seem to give a shit about him really as a romantic lead. Dorian falls in love with this local actress named Sybil, and she ends up killing herself because their relationship falls apart, and that actually really made me sad. I felt really bad for her mom because her mom was really trying to protect her from getting hurt, and she ended up getting hurt anyway and dying. And all of these characters are just pretentious and snobby. So I would give The Picture of Dorian Gray 2.5 to 3 stars. The other books that I have read for this TBR are Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, which I read in March. And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which I gave 5 stars to. I gave Little Women 3.5 to 4 stars. The reason why I didn't like Little Women was because of the love triangle between Joe Laurie and Meg. I just thought that was really unnecessary. And books that I read that are modernizations of Little Women this year are Hello Beautiful by Ann Napolitano, which I really liked. I really liked how this modernized the story of Little Women while keeping the character descriptions the same. And I just finished March by Geraldine Brooks, the same author as People of the Book and Horse. And March is a reimagining of Little Women that actually focuses on Mr. March, the father who's away at war throughout Little Women. So I think it was very interesting to learn more about his character and how he keeps in touch with his family while he's at war and stuff like that. I gave Little Women 3.5 to 4 stars. I gave Hello Beautiful 4 stars, and I gave Horse 4.5. Sorry, not Horse. March 4.5 stars. The next book that I read in this TBR was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I read this book and Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte back in February, and I did not really care for either of these books. I mean, Jane Eyre was good in the beginning, and I liked the build-up of the relationship between Jane and her love interest, but other than that, I couldn't really get into it. And Wuthering Heights, I could not stand the couple, Heathcliff and Catherine. So it is ironic that this book is featured in an episode of Friends. I don't know why the directors chose Rachel and Phoebe to read these books in their literature class at the new school, but I have a theory that the reason why they chose it is because Heathcliff and Catherine are 1800s versions of Ross and Rachel and how toxic their relationship is. That's just my theory. I don't know if that's true or not. Another classic book that is part of this TBR was featured on the Joey spinoff, which is the spinoff of Friends that was on TV from 2004 to 2006. That is basically a character study of Joey moving to California to continue his acting career, living with his sister and his nephew. His nephew, Michael, is very nerdy. And in this episode, where Pride and Prejudice is featured, Michael is having a book discussion with his college friends, and they're all discussing Pride and Prejudice. And Joey joins the book club too, but just because he's trying to find a girlfriend, and he ends up having a crush on one of Michael's classmates who is younger than him. As you guys remember, Joey was like the womanizer character from Friends who was always going after girls all the time and stuff. And his acting career kind of was all over the place in Friends too. Like, this is even kind of gone into a little bit deeper in the spin-off, because when he moves to California, he has the same issues he did in New York, where he finds crappy acting job after crappy acting job until he gets hired on the show Deep Powder, directed by Lauren, who's played by Lucy Liu, her character is kind of funny in Joey because she reminds me of Monica from Friends, even though she's a totally different character on a totally different show. But I really liked Lucy Liu's character on Joey. I think she was really great and really well cast. But as far as this episode of Joey, with the Joey in the book club, I gave Pride and Prejudice an A- because I was in a classic slump after reading Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights and not caring for either. Pride and Prejudice got me right out of that slump, and I loved the characters, and I loved the relationship build-up between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth. And another book that got me out of this slump that was not part of this TBR is Persuasion. I think Anne is one of Jane Austen's best written characters. So I gave Pride and Prejudice an A-. The next book in this TBR that I wanted to talk about is The Shining by Stephen King. This book is featured in the episode from season 3, the one where Monica and Richard are just friends. And this is the side plot of the episode. The main plot of the episode is Monica and Richard starting a relationship over again after being broken up for a little bit. But in the side plot, Rachel and Joey exchange books with each other. Rachel's book is Little Women, which I just talked about. And Joey's book is The Shining by Stephen King. So The Shining is probably one of my favorite books by Stephen King, because I would not call it very scary. I would call it more suspenseful. The plot kept me on the edge of my seat, and I was really hoping that Wendy would take her son Danny away from Jack because he was abusive, but that does not happen, unfortunately. So my favorite books in this TBR are Little Women, Pride and Prejudice, and The Shining. Oops. So the next thematic TBR for the fall of 2024 is Brat Summer. So this is based on the new Charlie SEX album. He's like a hip-hop singer that the booktubers I follow are really into. I got these book recommendations from Elias, Jack Edwards, and With Cindy. The first book in this TBR is Bunny by Mona Awad. This book has also been reviewed by Destiny, Sarah, Haley, and Rachel, and it's gotten pretty mixed reviews from all four of them. From what I understand, Bunny is about a MFA program at a prestigious college in New England, and they all call each other Bunny. And people in the comments of Cindy's Brat Summer video were comparing Bunny, like the group of girls, and Bunny to Heathers, the movie from the 1980s, which actually I'm really looking forward to reading this book to catch the comparisons, because I watched Heathers last month and I didn't really like that movie because it was too violent. So I'm really hoping that this book, Bunny, is not very violent, because I almost had to stop watching Heathers because of how violent it was. So I'm just hoping that Bunny is not so bad. The next book on this TBR is a book I just finished a couple of days ago. I read this book and Eileen by Ostesha Moshfegh in one day. These books were very intriguing, and the dynamics of the people in them were interesting. So, a little bit of history with these authors. I read books by these authors, Sally Rooney and Ostesha Moshfegh, back in the wintertime, and I can say that I did not like either book. The book I read by Sally Rooney was called Beautiful World, Where Are You? And the book that I read by Ostesha Moshfegh was My Year of Rest and Relaxation. So one thing that's interesting about Sally Rooney's writing is that she doesn't like to use quotation marks when people are speaking. So it's hard to really engage in the conversations because she doesn't use quotation marks. So actually, that was what turned me off from wanting to finish reading Beautiful World, Where Are You? But I gave Conversations with Friends a chance because I couldn't relate to the characters very well in Beautiful World, Where Are You? And the characters in Conversations with Friends were a little bit more relatable than those characters. We follow the inner monologue throughout this story of the main female lead, Frances, and she's very sarcastic, and she uses her sarcasm as a coping mechanism. Chandler being anybody? So that's what I liked about Conversations with Friends. Now let's talk about My Year of Rest and Relaxation versus Eileen. So Eileen is a thriller book, and I'm really into thrillers. So, I mean, this main character, Eileen, was a hot mess, and she was not a very likable character. I almost wanted to DNF this book like I did My Year of Rest and Relaxation, but I decided to see how I would like it, and I don't want to provide spoilers for the plot in case you want to read it too. So I would actually highly recommend that you read Eileen. I do not recommend My Year of Rest and Relaxation, though, because I made the mistake of reading that book right after I finished Matthew Perry's biography, and basically in My Year of Rest and Relaxation, we have a female main character who is depressed and basically wants to sleep forever. And like throughout his book, Matthew Perry talks about how much he wants to sleep. So I didn't like how much I connected that main character to Matthew Perry, which is why I had to stop reading that book, because it made me too sad. But I just didn't like the main female character in My Year of Rest and Relaxation, because she was whiny, she was depressive, she was really depressed. She had her therapist drug her up on all these medications so she could sleep for a year, and she was in a very codependent relationship with her best friend. I would have not wanted to be friends with her, honestly. So I gave Conversations with Friends a B, and Conversations with Friends a B+, and Eileen a B. Another book I read in a Brat Summer TBR was Sula by Toni Morrison. I love all of Toni Morrison's books. Other books I have read besides Sula from her are The Bluest Eye and Beloved, which I have behind me on my bookcase. So I really love her writing, and I can't really wait to read more from her. The last book from the Brat Summer TBR is The Book of Goose, which I read in March. And I had to DNF this book at 50% because I just could not find any of the characters relatable to me. The next books I'm reading on the Brat Summer TBR to wrap it up after Bunny will be Down the Drain and My Beautiful Friend. The next TBR that I wanted to talk about is a Disney Princess TBR. So back in January and February, I was reading a lot of Disney Princess retellings books, and basically I found, through my research of watching other people's YouTube videos, I have found a lot of books that I want to read this fall that continue that theme of Disney princesses. A new release I recently read that came out in June was Tangled Up in You by Christina Lauren, which is part of the Meant to Be series, which is a modern day retelling of Rapunzel, where Rapunzel is in college. And it was really interesting to see Rapunzel reimagined in a modern day world. And that's what I like the best about this book. The previous books that I have read in the Meant to Be series are If the Shoe Fits, which is based on Cinderella, By the Book, which is based on Beauty and the Beast, and Kiss the Girl, which is based on The Little Mermaid. And obviously, I show bias here. My favorite book in the series, besides Tangled Up in You, has been Kiss the Girl, because Little Mermaid is one of my favorite Disney movies. So, books that I'm looking forward the most to reading in this TBR are Book of Gothel, which is a villain origin story of Mother Gothel from Tangled. Darling Boy, which is a gay romance between Peter Pan and Captain Hook. Disfigured, which is a short story collection about disabled fairy tale characters. So this doesn't really focus on a Disney princess per se. It just more focuses on disabled characters from Disney movies and other fairy tales and tales of folklore. Another book that I will be reading is Spin in the Dawn, which I just got out of the library today, which is a modern retelling of Mulan. And another book I will be reading for this TBR will be Straight On Till Morning, which is a reimagining of Peter Pan. The next thematic TBR is historical fiction. 2 books that I am reading for this TBR are books I just received for my birthday, which are By Any Other Name by Jodi Picoult and James by Percival Everett. Other books I am reading or have read for this TBR are March by Geraldine Brooks, Horse by Geraldine Brooks, The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna, which I loved. One thing I will say about The Nightingale is that I wish that Kristen Hanna had really developed the sisterly relationship between the two main characters better. But I really loved that story overall. The writing was beautiful. The next two books I'm waiting to come in for at the library for this TBR are The Things That We Leave Unfinished, which is by the same author as Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. And this is a historical fiction about a girl who is working on putting together a oral history about her grandmother after she dies, and somebody else from her local town sets out to help her put together the manuscript and piece together the memories of her grandmother. And then the final book in this TBR is another book by Kristen Hanna called The Women, which is another World War II book. The next TBR is holiday new releases, which I will be reviewing in a video that is coming out on November 30th. And these new releases are A Jingle Bell Mingle, A Merry Little Murder Plot, All I Want Is You, Let It Glow, and The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year. Other books being reviewed for this TBR are Holly Jolly Ever After, which I just got out of the library today, and Love Holly, which I read in May. The next thematic focus is memoir. Two memoirs I am currently reading are Educated by Tara Westover, which is a reread from 2020, and Crying in H Mart, which is another book I just received for my birthday. Other books that I am reading for this TBR for rereads, I am going to be reading Happy Accidents by Jane Lynch, and I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Other books in this TBR that I will be reading are Grief is for People by Sloane Crosby, In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, Making a Scene by Constance Wu, which I just got out of the library today, The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop, which is coming in at the bookstore on September 17th, and Woman of Interest by my high school classmate Tracy O'Neill, which I am very, very excited to read. The next TBR is general new releases for August through December, and this list is long, and I'm just going to mention like 4 or 5 books from it. The top 4 books I'm looking most forward to reading on this TBR are People You'd Rather Forget, which is by my friend Kate, but she published it under a pen name. The Situationship, which is another romantic comedy by Christina Lauren. The Worst Duke in London by Amalie Howard, who's the same author of Never Met a Duke Like You. Throne of Secrets, which is the next book in the series that focuses on the gods of the underworld from Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I just wanted to say one thing about Carrie Maniscalco. I have read both Kingdom of the Wicked and Stalking Jack the Ripper, two of her most recent series, and I have just stayed so engaged in her writing and the development of her characters. And Thomas's relationship with Audrey in Stalking Jack the Ripper is just so sweet, and they are one of my favorite couples. So I'm really excited for this series about the gods of the underworld from Kingdom of the Wicked, and I'm looking forward for Throne of Secrets, which I think focuses on the Prince of Greed. The Prince of Greed, maybe? I can't remember. I'm also looking forward to reading You're the Problem, It's You by Emma Alvin, which is the sequel to Don't Want You Like a Best Friend, which I was recommended to by Riley Marie, and I just loved that book. Don't Want You Like a Best Friend is a modern reimagining of the 1995 movie The Parent Trap with Lindsay Lohan, which was originally a movie from the 1960s with Hayley Mills, and it is a combination of that with Regency London think Bridgerton and Pride and Prejudice. So if you like Pride and Prejudice or The Parent Trap, then I would highly recommend Don't Want You Like a Best Friend. So You're the Problem, It's You is the sequel to Don't Want You Like a Best Friend, and it is inspired by the 1990s rom-com 10 Things I Hate About You, which is based on the Shakespeare play Taming of the Shrew. And 10 Things I Hate About You is definitely one of my favorite romantic comedy movies. It stars Julia Stiles, Larissa Oleynik from The Secret World of Alex Mack, and Heath Ledger, who passed away in 2008, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt from Third Rock from the Sun and the 500 Days of Summer. So the next thematic TBR and final one on this list is thrillers, horror / dark academia. So books on this TBR that I read last year were If We Were Villains, which I gave an A- to, The Enchanted Hacienda, and The Historian, which I gave a B to, The Housemaid, which I gave an A- to, and Never Lie, which I gave an A to. Recent books that I read on this TBR include Catherine House, which I gave a C to, Gothicana, which I gave a C- to, Gone Girl, which I gave a B to, and Mexican Gothic, which I gave an A- to, My Dark Vanessa, which I gave a C- to, and Never Lie, which and Salem Falls, which I gave a B to. Other books that I will be reading in this TBR are The Boyfriend, which is Frida McFadden's new release, and Coraline by Neil Gaiman. Another book I'm reading by Neil Gaiman currently that is on my general TBR is Norse Mythology, which is another book I just got for my birthday. And then the other Stephen King book I am reading for this TBR is The Outsider, which was also featured in the TBR video that These Lyrics and Lines just released on, I think it was Wednesday. So I will be posting another reading update video for my August / September TBR on probably September 15th. So stay tuned for that. And Matt and I are coming out with our August wrap-up video on tomorrow at 1:30, and tomorrow at 5:30 we are releasing our Serious Issues in the Media wrap-up on Cougar Town. So please stay tuned for those videos, and thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.